Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 4 of Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt. So, let me start off by just kind of covering what I was, going off on last time. So, I had been talking about, I believe, if I didn't mention this is going to be weird, but I swear I mentioned it. I swear I wasn't just thinking about it. But I swear I mentioned, if not, I'm mentioning it now, so, that the last episode was, just too much for me. And it was to the point where it became less, enjoyable satire and more just annoying and disappointing. Because there's a certain point where it starts to, I guess you could say, lose its luster. It starts to just become, again, too much. It's like there is, even for satire and stuff, there are certain limits where you have to keep yourself in order to make it, believable, to make it enjoyable, and to keep that comedic edge without going over the top. If you go too far, then it's just shock humor. It's shock value, and that's not good. Shock humor is good in very small spurts, But shock humor is one of the easiest types of humor to overdo. And if you overdo it, it becomes mind-numbingly bad really quickly. Because, one, it loses the shock if you just constantly do it. And two, it just starts to become annoying and it feels forced. Like you're trying to be edgy just because you can get away with it, rather than you're actually trying to, do or say something with that kind of shock. And again, with a series that is meant to be a satire, a parody, you want to keep that lower and everything. So I was just feeling after last episode that it's like, if the series continues to go kind of down this path, I'm not going to be able to enjoy that. Because, again, last episode was so just much that it completely broke away my interest in it. And obviously I'm still giving it a chance. This is what, 12, 13 episodes? So it's like, I don't feel like I should just give up based on one bad episode, right? I mean, that's kind of a dumb thing to do. And I've done that before, so I can say that it's a dumb thing to do. Speaking from experience. Yeah, this is 13 episodes, okay. But it's just like... Sorry, I got distracted. I had a message. It's just like, I want this series to be good, I want it to be really enjoyable and fun, like the first 2 episodes were, especially the first episode. I don't want it to go too over the top and just kind of lose what made it special. And so, because as you know, if you watch my first impressions reaction to the first episode, I was really enjoying it. I thought it was absolutely really exciting and fun and entertaining as hell. And so The second episode I enjoyed as well, and then the third just kind of went off the rails. Like, I understand the point of this series is making fun of a lot of different things, a lot of different tropes, American culture, American cartoons, um, sexuality and stuff. It's a satire on so many different things. I understand that. But again, there are points where you can just take it a little too far and make it just not funny anymore. It becomes more about just doing whatever you can to shock the viewers and less about, satirizing different tropes and cultural stereotypes and whatnot within the world. And so I really hope that it's not a trend that continues. I hope it was just one bad episode and we can move on from that and never have to speak about it again. um, but we'll see, because I will say, if I get another hint that that's going to happen, I probably will drop this, because that's the kind of thing that really does it's not just it's not just unentertaining for me. It actively bothers the shit out of me when shows do stuff like that, and it actively makes the viewing experience pretty much drop to a zero in terms of my interest. Like, I actively find disdain for continuing to watch or react to something if it does something like that. And again, I'm continuing to give it a chance because that's just the right thing to do, and because that could have just been an outlier as an episode. But I'm hoping that it proves me wrong here. I'm hoping that it proves me wrong. I'm hoping that it was just an outlier. I'm hoping that the rest of the series goes back to just being the good old wacky satire that it started out as. And another reason, I mean, just being 3 episodes in, it's like, it's hard to judge even a 13 episode series on that, you know? I don't think there's necessarily a point, like a specific point where you should get to. I think it's just dependent on the person. Some people go by a 3 episode rule. Some people go by like half of a core or whatnot, which would be like 6 episodes about. For me, it's just like, if you don't want to continue watching something, don't continue watching. Don't try to justify forcing yourself to watch more of it just to see if it might get better later on. And again, with this situation, the first 2 episodes I enjoyed. It's just the 3rd episode that was a bother for me. But I know that if it continues to be like the 3rd episode was, then I'm going to have problems. If that continues to be a trend to any degree, that's going to be a problem for me. So that's why I'm saying, if it does that again, especially with this episode, but if it does that again, I might have to drop it, depending on how egregious it is. But if it goes through most of the rest of this season and before we get another episode like that, then that's okay. Because that's that means that it is just like these outlier episodes that are bad. But if it continues to be a thing more consistently or more recently after that, it's just like, I don't know. I don't really have to justify my reasons here. But I choose to do so for you guys and everything, because I respect you enough to at least explain myself when I'm feeling bad about a series, or even when I'm just concerned like I am now. Because I refuse to drop a series without letting you guys know. I will always let you know, and always make sure that it's not just out of the blue. And I'm trying to give everything as much of a chance as I can. So I'm sorry if this rambling starting off the video is a little hard to sit through or just like annoying or whatever. I apologize, but I needed to get this out. And I needed to let you guys know where entirely my thoughts are going forward on this. Because, especially since this episode might affect that. So, hopefully it ends up being good, and hopefully I'm proven wrong and we don't have to worry about it. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving it the chance. And hopefully that was just a one-time misstep. Because, God, that was a misstep. Either way, let's just get this going. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, we're back on track. Hopefully it is just that one episode, because I can't speak. This episode was good. Really good, actually. In fact, I would say this is probably my favorite episode so far. And I think that's because it felt more focused. It wasn't just trying to use its humor as shock value. It was actually like, saying something. It was satirizing something. See, that's the point of satire. A lot of people just don't always seem to realize. Satire is supposed to say something. It's not just comedy for the sake of comedy. It's legitimately satirizing something. It's making fun of, mocking, or pointing out the idiocy of things. And both of the segments in this episode did that. Obviously in a ridiculous way, but still. The first one obviously touching on society's overly focused view on body shaming and body weight and whatnot. And the second segment focusing on how society views immodesty or nudity or just, being in clothing that doesn't cover a lot of skin. So let's talk about each of these segments. So the first segment is obviously all about stalking. I don't know why I had a brain fart there. The first episode is all about stalking and her starting to put on weight, or at least feeling like she is. At first, it's just Panty getting to her, and she puts on maybe like 3 pounds, and it bothers her a little bit just because Panty's words got to her, because Panty's an asshole. They're both assholes, mind you, but still. But after that, after she eats something specific, she starts gaining larger amounts of weight, just really out of the blue. And it's clear that something else is going on. It's eventually revealed that there's this big-tittied slug woman, which is so fucking uncomfortable, creating these pastries that increase the body fat a body, receives and creates and whatnot. So they have to go and stop her, though at the moment stalking is inflated into a ridiculous, almost kaiju level size. But they do manage to stop her. Stalking returns to her normal hot self, and all is good. And yeah, so the episode, like I said, the segment, like I said, touches on society's view of being overweight. Like, it even starts off the episode talking about how society's obsessed with being thin and obsessed with diets and, you know, as they put it, looking like a cancer patient and shit. Obviously, exaggerations and everything, but it is a true thing. Society is obsessed with just looks in general, but especially when it comes to weight. There's a straight up shaming that happens for fat people. And I can speak from experience. It happens in schools, it happens in workplaces, it happens everywhere. Fat people are often shamed because of their body size, simply because as a society we're taught that basically fat people have less value, that they're gross, that they're unhealthy. And this stuff is not entirely inherently true. Like, being overweight can lead to some health issues, of course. But there's plenty of people who are overweight who are still fairly healthy overall. And there are plenty of thin people who are very unhealthy. There's a lot of things that determine health and everything. Weight is just one small thing, and it's not even always guaranteed. But because society has been molded into this, has been manipulated into believing that thinner is inherently more acceptable, we have gained this entire diet mentality. And again, as I said in the reaction, if you want to lose weight for you and do it because you want to feel better about yourself from your perspective, that's great. And there is nothing wrong with that, and it should be celebrated and accepted. But you shouldn't be trying to lose weight just because of what other people think of you. That's unhealthy. And that can lead to a lot of eating disorders. I've known people who have had eating disorders because they were told that they're not thin enough. They were told they didn't fit this specific idea of healthy body size. And it's fucking gross. This is what causes all these different eating disorders, bulimia and stuff, and it's horrible. And it's not just women, it's men and NBs who go through this as well. Everyone has gone through this kind of stuff. And so I like that this episode touched on that and very much, you know, kind of mocked that attitude. And in the end, it even straight up showed that stocking is like, I'm fine with putting on a couple extra pounds as long as I get to enjoy what I eat. And that's a very healthy attitude to have. She's like, I'm not worried if I gain a small amount of weight just because I eat a little less healthy. She's like, I'm eating what I enjoy because it's what I enjoy. And the weight doesn't bother me as long as it's obviously not like what happened. So it's like kind of has almost a good message to it too. Obviously delivered in a ridiculous, over the top way, but that's just the series. And then the second segment, like I said, touched on the idea of modesty and everything. And mind you, it's unclear the age of these characters sometimes, because it's like it mentioned high schoolers and everything in the episode, or the segment is called like High School Nudical, and like we know Brief is in high school. Panty and Stocking technically are not. They're angels. They're technically way older. And a lot of these other people looked like they could have very easily been adults. And based on what those big, tough guys were saying to Brief, it's also very possible that they were adults and they saw him just because he was so young as a teenager and everything. that's why they were making fun of his age and all. So it's kind of unclear. And as I've stated before, with this being a satire slash parody series, it can get away with a little more stuff like that, but I don't know. It's just, it is a little weird to still do that kind of stuff, even with a satire. But I'm thinking based on the context clues and all, I'm thinking maybe some of them were high schoolers, but probably a good portion of them were not. There's just context clues to kind of go either way, I guess. I don't know, unless I missed something, and you can maybe correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But again, either way, it's obviously a parody series. It's not meant to be taken seriously. And it's just like, and in fact, in that way, it could kind of be parodying what a lot of anime do. It's like, oh, this character that is like very obviously not supposed to look like a teenager is still somehow a teenager, yet they're also going to be super sexualized in the anime because anime. It's like this might be kind of making fun of that trope too. I could very, very much believe that. But yeah, so the episode centers around basically a race, oh God, what is it called? Kind of like a 5K or something like that. Where it's a themed one, where it's like, okay, everyone is in their underwear and stuff. And it's like, I've seen like themed 5Ks and whatnot. Like there's one called the Color Run, which is like everybody like has all these like colored paints and everything, and everyone gets all messy and colorful by the end. And I've seen ones that are done like in costumes and everything. There's all kinds of ones, like themed races like this. And that's kind of what this is. And apparently, according to what Garter said, it started out as a form of protest, which is very much believable. Because I've heard of stuff like this where people would like protest by, you know, dressing down, by getting down to their underwear and stuff. There's even been protests where people would like basically wear nothing but like pasties and shit. It has happened in real life. And then it kind of evolved into something that they just kind of do for fun as well, and as a form of free expression. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's realistic and believable, that people would do that. And it's kind of touching on the idea that they feel more free dressing down like that, and it feels more, they feel like they're being less constricted by what society expects from them, with having to, you know, dress modestly normally. And again, this is something that I've heard about in real life, that people have talked about. The entire question about modesty versus, you know, free clothing, I guess you could say. You know what I mean. And my view on it has obviously changed throughout the years, because I'm growing up as a Christian, and especially a Christian who had been manipulated into believing certain things that I very much do not anymore. One of the big things growing up was always the idea that modest is hottest, which is not just exclusive to Christianity, mind you, but they definitely utilize that. The entire idea that it's more attractive for, and it was mostly geared towards women, by the way, mostly attractive for a woman to be dressed modestly, like not a lot of skin showing, no cleavage at all, no legs showing, stuff like that. If a woman's in a swimsuit, it should be like a one piece, not like a bikini or anything. You get the idea. This was a big thing in churches I went to growing up, and yes, in other places too, like schools. And I get the idea behind it, and everything, especially for teenagers and all. But at the same time, it's like a person should be able to wear what makes them comfortable, what they like to wear. If a person is fine with showing off cleavage or even likes to show off cleavage because they like those kind of outfits, or for whatever reason, then they should be allowed to wear that. And so on and so forth. And again, this is almost entirely geared towards cis women / trans men / feminine presenting NBs. Basically anyone who presents as feminine and like wears like two-piece swimsuits and stuff like that, or shows off cleavage or that kind of stuff. This is only geared towards people like that. And it's so disproportionate because you see like male presenting individuals and whatnot, or masculine presenting individuals, like with their shirts off all the time, wearing very little clothing, and they're never like treated like that. It was originally steeped in sexism because of the entire thing about, you know, them viewing it just as women and everything before. And you could even, in some ways, count it as other issues too, because of how culture has changed since then and how we now know a lot more in regards to transgender people and non-binary people and whatnot. There's a lot that goes into it. Either way, it's definitely a very gross idea to sexualize people like that, and to not sexualize other people, even though they're doing the same thing. And again, my idea, my view on it is wear whatever makes you comfortable. If you show off a lot of skin, that's fine. That's not consent. And if someone sees that as consent, that's on them, and they are fucked up and terrible and disgusting. That's them being shown to be bad people, not you. You are not in the wrong for dressing that way. It is not your fault. And this kind of even goes into the entire idea. There are people who still, to this day, in 2022, who try to blame rape victims because of the way they dress, saying like, if you didn't dress like a slut, then you wouldn't be sexually assaulted. And it's like, anyone who says that can fuck right the hell off. Slut shaming is absolutely fucking disgusting. But shaming anyone for getting sexually assaulted and blaming them, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, but you can fuck right on off, you cunt. Anyone who would say that just deserves to get hit really fucking hard, at the very least. That shit pisses me off. You do not blame victims for getting any kind of assaulted, but especially victims of sexual assault. You just don't blame victims. Don't do that shit. And don't slut shame or body shame or clothing shame or anything like that. Let people wear what the fuck they want. It's not consent. It's just style. And so I like that this episode touched on that kind of idea. Getting back on topic here and trying to move away from just the pure anger I was just kind of delving into a bit. Because, yeah, I was actually getting heated there for a second. But that shit pisses me off. It really does. But yeah, this episode definitely touched on these kinds of topics, and I love that. This is what I want from this series. Topics that, one, I actually have a somewhat level of investment in, and two, topics that are important to the world, but can also be obviously utilized within the over-the-top comedic way that this series tends to go. It's like, obviously these are topics that this series can make fun of and joke about without like being disrespectful towards. Because like I said in the first segment, it makes a point of Stocking saying at the end, I don't mind if I put on a little weight as long as I get to eat what I enjoy. And it's like, that is actually a really good lesson. That's actually a really good thing to hear. And the second segment, obviously, talking about body positivity and being okay with showing off more of your body if that's something that you're comfortable with. These are actually fairly good lessons. It's not telling you that you have to live that way, but that it's okay to. And that's cool. But it's still ridiculous and over the top and funny, and it does all of that. It's not too much. It doesn't go too far. I was admittedly still annoyed by the entire thing with Garter being just... And that's more, I guess, of a personal thing. I think I mentioned that last time, too. Just, I'm not a fan of that trope and that joke, because that is way too real. That is way too real and too upsetting of a thing that has happened with priests and young boys and everything. It's just that is just a personal thing that bothers the shit out of me. So, yeah. But yeah, overall, this episode was great. I actually really loved it. So we're kind of back on track now. And I hope that it continues to be more stuff like this, and that the last episode was just an outlier. But we'll see. Either way, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt? And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.